The fluorescent light above pump 3 had been flickering for exactly 17 minutes when Marcus heard the scratching. Not the usual sound of wind against metal or the scrape of truck tires on asphalt. This was deliberate, methodical, like fingernails dragging across concrete in a rhythm that made his teeth ache. He pressed his face against the bulletproof glass of the overnight booth, peering into the Wyoming darkness that stretched endlessly beyond the truck stop's harsh circle of light. Nothing moved except the shadows that seemed to writhe between the fuel pumps, shifting in ways that defied the steady glow of the overhead lamps. The scratching stopped. Marcus's breath fogged the glass as he waited, every muscle tensed. 3 months of working the graveyard shift at Crossroads truck stop had taught him that silence here was far more terrifying than noise. In the quiet, things moved. Things that shouldn't exist in the rational world of diesel fuel and coffee machines. His fingers found the laminated card tucked beneath the register, the rules he'd memorized, but hoped he'd never need. Rule number 1 glared back at him in bold red letters. If you hear scratching after midnight, do not look outside until it stops. But he'd already looked, and now something was looking back. Welcome back to the Channel Night Owls. Tonight's story comes from the loneliest stretch of highway in America, where the rules of reality bend like heat waves rising from summer asphalt. I'm curious, are you watching this from the safety of your warm bed? Or are you brave enough to listen while you're alone in the dark? If this story keeps you awake tonight, smash that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Trust me, you're going to need something to occupy your mind when sleep becomes impossible. Because some rules exist for a reason, and some jobs come with a price that no paycheck can justify. 3 months earlier, Marcus Valdez had been desperate enough to take any job that didn't require a background check or questions about the 6-month gap in his employment history. The Crossroads truck stop sat like a fluorescent island in the vast darkness of central Wyoming, 60 miles from the nearest town, and accessible only by a single 2-lane highway that seemed to disappear into nothing in both directions. The day manager, Carol, was a weathered woman in her 50s who chain-smoked menthols and spoke in clipped sentences. She'd interviewed Marcus in the cramped office behind the convenience store, surrounded by towers of invoices and a coffee maker that looked older than he was. Night shift pays double, she'd said without preamble, not bothering to look up from his hastily filled application. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. You'll be alone most of the time. Truckers stop through, but they're usually gone quick. Just keep the pumps running, coffee fresh, and the doors locked. It seemed straightforward enough. Marcus had worked retail before, and the isolation didn't bother him. In fact, he preferred it. After the incident in Denver, being around people made his skin crawl. There are rules. Carol had continued, sliding a laminated card across the desk. Read them. Follow them. Don't ask questions about them. Previous guy didn't follow the rules. What happened to him? Carol's eyes had finally lifted from the paperwork, fixing him with a stare that made his stomach clench. He didn't follow the rules. The card contained 7 numbered items written in different handwriting, as if each rule had been added by a different person over time. Some were printed neatly, others scrawled in desperate urgency. If you hear scratching after midnight, do not look outside until it stops. The coffee maker must never be empty between 2 to 4 a.m. They get thirsty. If someone asks for directions to home, give them the map in drawer 3. Do not look at the map yourself. The bathroom lights must stay on all night. Check every hour. If they're off, leave immediately. If a customer pays with coins that feel warm, count them 3 times. If the count changes, call Carol immediately. Never ever serve the man in the yellow rain slicker. He's been dead for 15 years. If you see movement in the abandoned building across the highway, close the blinds and don't open them until sunrise. Marcus had assumed they were inside jokes, the kind of folklore that accumulates around isolated workplaces. He'd laughed nervously and asked if there were any real rules he needed to know. Carol hadn't laughed back. The first month had been blissfully normal. Truckers came and went, buying energy drinks and gas station burritos. He'd restocked shelves, cleaned bathrooms, and counted down the hours until dawn. The rules remained an amusing curiosity tucked under his register, nothing more than the fevered imagination of previous night shift workers driven stir-crazy by solitude. He should have known better. In a place where the horizon stretched endlessly in all directions and the nearest neighbor was miles of empty prairie, normal was a luxury they couldn't afford. The first time Marcus truly paid attention to the rules was on a Tuesday night in his second month when the coffee maker went silent at 2:17 a.m. He'd been reading a paperback thriller behind the counter, occasionally glancing up when headlights swept across the windows. The steady gurgle of the coffee machine was part of the night's soundtrack, as constant as the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant rumble of highway traffic. When it stopped, the silence was so absolute it felt like a physical weight pressing against his eardrums. Marcus looked up from his book. The coffee maker sat dark and cold, its digital display blank. He couldn't remember it ever being turned off during his shifts. Carol had emphasized that coffee was available 24 hours and truckers needed their caffeine fix regardless of the hour. He walked over to investigate, checking the power cord and pressing buttons. Nothing happened. The machine was plugged in, but completely unresponsive, as if it had simply decided to die. That's when he remembered rule number 2. His hand found the laminated card almost unconsciously. The coffee maker must never be empty between 2 to 4 a.m. They get thirsty. A chill ran down his spine as he stared at the dead machine. He tried to rationalize it. Electrical problems were common in old buildings, and the truck stop was definitely old. But something about the timing felt wrong, like the universe was testing his resolve. The backup coffee maker sat on a shelf in the storage room. Marcus had never used it, but Carol had shown him where it was during his first week. As he walked toward the back of the store, his footsteps echoed strangely in the empty space, each step seeming to linger longer than it should. The storage room was cramped and windowless, lit by a single bulb that cast harsh shadows between the shelves. Marcus found the backup machine and was about to grab it when he heard something that made his blood freeze. Tapping. Not the random patter of objects settling or the building expanding and contracting. This was rhythmic, deliberate, like fingers drumming against glass. It was coming from the direction of the main store. Marcus crept back toward the counter, the backup coffee maker clutched against his chest. The tapping continued steady and patient, as if someone or something was trying to get his attention. As he rounded the corner, he saw the source of the sound. A man stood outside the front windows, barely visible in the pool of light cast by the overhead lamps. He was tall and gaunt, wearing what appeared to be an old-fashioned yellow rain slicker that gleamed wetly despite the clear night. The man's face was hidden in shadow, but Marcus could see his fingers pressed against the glass, tapping in that same methodical rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. Marcus's eyes dropped to the rules card in his trembling hand. Rule number 6 seemed to glow with its own light. Never ever serve the man in the yellow rain slicker. He's been dead for 15 years. The tapping stopped. When Marcus looked up, the man was gone. The windows reflected only the empty interior of the truck stop, fluorescent lights casting everything in harsh relief. But on the glass where the man had been standing, Marcus could see the fog of breath marks and the wet imprints of fingertips. His hands shook as he set up the backup coffee maker, filling it with water and grounds while constantly glancing toward the windows. The machine gurgled to life just as the clock ticked over to 2:23 a.m., and with its familiar sound, the oppressive weight of silence lifted from the store. But the feeling of being watched remained. For the rest of the night, Marcus found himself checking and rechecking the rules card. What had seemed like harmless folklore now felt like a survival guide, each rule a barrier between him and something that defied explanation. When Carol arrived at 7 a.m., she found him pale and exhausted, clutching a cup of coffee like a lifeline. "Everything okay?" she asked, noting his appearance. Marcus started to tell her about the man in the rain slicker, but something in her expression stopped him. There was a knowing look in her eyes, as if she'd heard this story before. "I read the rules," he said instead. Carol nodded approvingly. "Good. That means you're learning." She didn't ask him which rule he'd encountered. She didn't need to. After the incident with the coffee maker and the man in the yellow rain slicker, Marcus approached his shifts with a new awareness. The rules were no longer quaint superstitions, they were instructions for survival in a place where the normal laws of reality had been suspended. Week by week, the strangeness accumulated. It started small. Customers who paid with coins that felt unnaturally warm, their metal surfaces radiating heat like they'd been pulled from a furnace. The first time it happened, Marcus had assumed the coins had been sitting in a hot car or truck cab. But when he counted them 6 quarters for a coffee refill, the number changed each time. 6, then 8, then 5, then 9. He'd called Carol immediately, his voice shaking as he described the impossible mathematics. "Put them in the safe," she'd instructed. "Don't touch them again. I'll deal with it in the morning." When she arrived for the day shift, the coins had vanished. The safe was empty except for the usual cash deposits. Carol hadn't seemed surprised. "Where did they go?" Marcus had asked. "Back where they came from," she'd replied, as if that explained anything. The abandoned building across the highway became another source of constant anxiety. During the day, it looked like what it was, a failed gas station from the 1970s, its broken windows and collapsed roof testament to decades of neglect. But at night, shadows moved behind those broken panes of glass with purpose and intelligence. The first time Marcus saw the movement, he'd convinced himself it was wild animals taking shelter. Wyoming had plenty of wildlife, and an empty building would make a perfect den for coyotes or feral cats. But animals didn't move in coordinated patterns, and they certainly didn't seem to watch him through the windows with the focused intensity of predators studying their prey. Following rule number 7, he'd closed the blinds whenever the activity across the highway became too obvious. But closing them felt like putting on a blindfold in a room full of enemies, safer perhaps, but infinitely more terrifying. The worst part was the waiting. Between the isolated incidents, normal life continued. Truckers stopped for fuel and food, completely oblivious to the wrongness that permeated the place after midnight. They complained about coffee prices and road conditions, paid with normal money that felt appropriately cool to the touch, and disappeared back into the night without incident. Marcus began to feel like he was living in 2 different worlds. During the day and early evening, Crossroads was just another truck stop on an empty stretch of highway. But after midnight, it became something else entirely, a thin place where the membrane between reality and nightmare had worn dangerously thin. The bathroom lights became an obsession. Rule number 4 demanded hourly checks, and Marcus found himself setting his phone alarm to ensure he never forgot. The consequences of that particular rule violation remained unclear, but he had no desire to find out. Each hour, he would walk the short hallway to the restrooms, flip the switch, and watch the fluorescent tubes flicker to life, until the night they didn't. It was 3:47 a.m. when Marcus discovered the bathroom lights were off. He'd been restocking the energy drink cooler when he realized he'd forgotten the hourly check. Panic seized him as he rushed toward the back of the store, fumbling for the light switch in the darkness. Nothing happened. He flipped the switch repeatedly, his breathing becoming more rapid with each failed attempt. The fluorescent fixtures hung silent and dark above him, their tubes reflecting the dim light from the main store like dead eyes. The rule was clear: if the lights were off, leave immediately. But leaving meant abandoning his post, and Carol had been equally clear about the importance of staying at the truck stop all night. Marcus stood paralyzed in the doorway, caught between conflicting instructions, while something in the darkness of the bathroom began to stir. It started as a whisper of movement, like fabric brushing against tile. Then came the sound of water dripping, though all the faucets were turned off. The dripping had a rhythm to it, a cadence that reminded him uncomfortably of the tapping he'd heard from the man in the yellow rain slicker. A new smell reached his nostrils, not the usual combination of disinfectant and truck stop air freshener, but something organic and wrong. It reminded him of meat left too long in the sun, sweet and nauseating. The darkness in the bathroom seemed to deepen, becoming thick and viscous. Marcus could feel it pressing against him, trying to pull him inside. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to flee the building and never look back. Instead, he slammed the bathroom door shut and grabbed the industrial flashlight from behind the counter. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing the source of the malfunction. The fluorescent tubes hadn't burned out. They'd been systematically destroyed. Each one shattered from the inside, as if something had exploded within the glass. Fragments littered the floor like sharp snow, and in the center of the destruction, something had written a message on the mirror in what looked like condensation. "We know you're watching." The words faded even as Marcus stared at them, dissolving back into clear glass as if they'd never existed. But the smell of decay lingered, and in the silence that followed, he could swear he heard something laughing from inside the walls. He didn't call Carol this time. Some knowledge was too dangerous to share, and some experiences could only be survived alone. Marcus spent the rest of the night with his back to the wall, watching every shadow and listening for sounds that shouldn't exist. When the sun finally rose and Carol arrived for the morning shift, she found him sitting behind the counter with the industrial flashlight still clutched in his hands. "Bathroom lights?" she asked, noting his haggard appearance. He nodded, unable to trust his voice. Carol sighed and pulled out her phone. "I'll call the electrician. This happens sometimes." "This has happened before, more often than you'd think." She studied his face with something that might have been sympathy. "You're handling it better than most. The last guy lasted exactly 2 weeks after his first bathroom incident." "What happened to him?" Carol's expression darkened. "He stopped following the rules." 3 weeks after the bathroom incident, Marcus thought he had the truck stop figured out. Follow the rules, survive the night, collect the paycheck. It wasn't a career, but it was tolerable, manageable fear in exchange for financial stability. He was wrong. It was a Thursday night in late October when everything changed. The first snow of the season had begun falling around midnight, dusting the empty highway with a thin layer of white that muffled sound and made the world beyond the truck stop's lights disappear entirely. Marcus had just finished his hourly bathroom check. The new fluorescent tubes Carol's electrician had installed were working perfectly when he heard a car door slam outside. Through the windows, he could see a figure approaching the front entrance, moving with the careful steps of someone navigating slick pavement. The door chime rang as a woman entered, shaking snow from her dark hair. She was maybe 30, wearing a heavy winter coat and jeans, with the slightly dazed expression of someone who'd been driving too long. Nothing unusual about her except for the fact that she'd appeared out of nowhere on a night when visibility was near zero. "Excuse me," she said, approaching the counter. "I'm lost. Can you give me directions to home?" The blood in Marcus's veins turned to ice water. He fumbled for the rules card, already knowing what he'd find. Rule number 3 stared back at him. If someone asks for directions to home, give them the map in drawer 3. Do not look at the map yourself. His hands shook as he opened the third drawer beneath the register. Inside was a single folded piece of paper, yellowed with age and worn soft from handling. He could feel the weight of the woman's gaze as he lifted it out, her eyes never leaving his face. "Here," he said, placing the map on the counter without unfolding it. "This should help." The woman smiled, but there was something wrong with the expression. It was 2 wide, revealing teeth that seemed sharper than they should be. "Thank you. You're very kind." She picked up the map and began to unfold it. As the paper opened, Marcus caught a glimpse of what was drawn on it. Not roads or landmarks, but something that looked like a maze made of symbols that hurt to look at. Lines that twisted back on themselves in impossible geometries, accompanied by text written in a language that made his eyes water. "Don't look," the woman said softly, and her voice had changed. It was deeper now, with harmonics that seemed to come from somewhere other than her throat. "The map isn't for you." Marcus jerked his gaze away, focusing on the coffee maker, the cash register, anything except the paper in her hands. But even in his peripheral vision, he could see the map was glowing, now emanating a sickly phosphorescent light that cast writhing shadows on the walls. "Almost there," the woman murmured, tracing routes on the map with her finger. "So close to home now." When Marcus risked another glance at her face, he saw that her features were shifting subtly, skin flowing like wax in heat. Her eyes had changed color, first brown, then green, then something that wasn't a color at all, but rather an absence of light that seemed to pull at his vision. The front door opened again, letting in a swirl of snow and the sound of wind. But no one entered. Instead, things began to emerge from the storm shadows with too many angles, shapes that moved wrong entities that existed in the spaces between heartbeats. "They've been waiting," the woman said conversationally, still studying her impossible map. "Waiting for someone to give them directions. You've been so helpful." The temperature in the truck stop plummeted. Marcus's breath misted in the air as frost began to form on the inside of the windows. The fluorescent lights flickered their steady hum, replaced by a sound like insects buzzing in the walls. More figures materialized from the storm, crowding around the pumps and pressing against the windows. Marcus recognized some of them from the rules. The man in the yellow rain slicker stood prominently among them, his dead eyes fixed on the interior of the store. Others were new horrors, amalgamations of shadow and malice that made his sanity flinch away from direct observation. "The rules," Marcus whispered, clutching the laminated card like a talisman. "I followed the rules." The woman laughed, a sound like breaking glass mixed with distant screaming. "Oh, you did? Perfectly. You gave me the map just as you were supposed to, but you never read rule number 8, did you?" "There is no rule number 8. Check again." With trembling hands, Marcus flipped over the laminated card. On the back, written in fresh ink that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, was a single line. Rule 8. If you give someone the map to home, you become the map. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He'd been set up from the beginning, the job, the rules, the careful conditioning that had made him compliant and trusting. Every night shift worker who'd preceded him had followed the same path, guided by the same instructions until they reached this moment of understanding. The woman folded her map and tucked it into her coat. As she did, Marcus felt something fundamental shift inside him. His skin began to tingle, then burn, as if every nerve ending was being rewritten. The familiar weight of his body became strange and distant, replaced by a spreading sensation of flatness, of being reduced to 2 dimensions. "Don't fight it," the woman advised kindly. "The transformation is easier if you don't resist." But Marcus had spent 3 months learning to survive in an impossible place, and survival was the one skill he truly mastered. Instead of accepting his fate, he did the one thing the rules had never explicitly forbidden. He ran toward the back of the store, toward the storage room where he'd first heard the tapping. Behind him, the woman's laughter turned to shrieks of rage, and the things outside began hammering against the windows with increasing fury. The storage room had no exterior windows, no doors except the one he'd entered through. It should have been a trap, a dead end that would only delay the inevitable. But Marcus had noticed something during his months of restocking shelves, a section of wall that sounded hollow when accidentally bumped, painted over so many times that the seams were barely visible. He threw his shoulder against it with desperate strength, and the hidden panel gave way. Beyond was a tunnel carved from earth and stone, its walls lined with symbols similar to those he'd glimpsed on the map. The air inside smelled of centuries and secrets, but it led away from the truck stop, away from the things that wanted to fold him into geometric impossibility. Behind him, the woman's voice rose to an inhuman howl. "You can't escape. The map always finds its way home." Marcus ran into the darkness, guided only by the desperate hope that somewhere ahead lay a different kind of rule, one that might offer salvation instead of servitude. The tunnel seemed to stretch for miles, sloping gradually upward through packed earth and stone. Marcus ran until his lungs burned, and his legs felt like rubber, guided only by the faint phosphorescent glow of the symbols carved into the walls. Behind him, the sounds of pursuit had faded to an occasional whisper of movement, as if his hunters were content to follow at a distance. Eventually, exhaustion forced him to stop. He leaned against the tunnel wall, gasping for air and trying to process what had happened. The rules he'd memorized so carefully had been a trap, each one designed to guide him toward this moment of betrayal. But who had written them? And how many night shift workers had followed the same path before him? The symbols on the walls provided no answers. They seemed to pulse with their own inner light, forming patterns that suggested meaning without revealing it. Some looked vaguely familiar, geometric shapes that reminded him of the map the woman had unfolded, lines that hurt to follow with his eyes. As his breathing returned to normal, Marcus became aware of something else in the tunnel. Air movement. A slight breeze that carried the smell of the outside world, snow pine trees, and clean mountain air. Somewhere ahead was an exit. He followed the breeze for what felt like hours, the tunnel gradually widening until it opened into a natural cave system. Moonlight filtered down from above, through a crack in the stone ceiling, illuminating a cavern filled with evidence of previous visitors. Scattered across the cave floor were the belongings of other night shift workers, name tags, wallets, car keys, and personal items that told a story of decades of victims. Marcus picked up one of the name tags, reading the faded text, "David, Crossroads, Truck Stop, Night Shift." The plastic was brittle with age. A notebook lay open near the center of the cave, its pages filled with handwriting in different styles. Marcus approached it cautiously, then began to read, "If you're reading this, you made it past the map. Congratulations. You're smarter than I was. The truck stop is a feeding station for things that exist in the spaces between reality. The rules are bait designed to condition us into compliance. But there's another way out. The tunnel you came through connects to the old mine system. Follow the main passage north. There are chalk marks on the walls to guide you. It leads to a ranger station about 5 miles from here. Tell them you got lost hiking. Don't mention the truck stop. They wouldn't believe you anyway. Whatever you do, don't go back. The woman with the map is patient. She'll wait for you to return, and when you do, the transformation will be instant. Find another job. Move to another state. Forget this place exists. Good luck." Sarah Chen Night Shift, 2019 to 2019. Below Sarah's message were dozens of others, a record of everyone who'd managed to escape the truck stop's trap. Some entries were brief warnings, others detailed accounts of the horrors they'd witnessed. All of them ended with the same advice: run and never look back. Marcus added his own entry to the notebook documenting what he'd learned about the rules and the woman with the map. Future escapees would need every advantage they could get. The chalk marks Sarah had mentioned were faint but visible, leading deeper into the cave system. Marcus followed them through a maze of passages, his phone's flashlight cutting through absolute darkness. The symbols on the walls gradually faded away, replaced by ordinary rock formations and the occasional piece of abandoned mining equipment. Hours later, he emerged from a hidden entrance, disguised as a boulder pile, finding himself on a wooded mountainside with the lights of a ranger station visible in the distance. Snow continued to fall, covering his tracks and erasing any evidence of his passage. The ranger on duty, a middle-aged woman named Janet, accepted his story about getting lost during a night hike without question. She provided hot coffee, a warm blanket, and directions to the nearest town. When she asked where he'd been hiking, Marcus gave her a location 50 miles away, claiming he'd gotten turned around in the storm. "Lucky you found shelter," Janet said. "This storm came out of nowhere. We've had to close several mountain roads." As dawn broke over the Wyoming mountains, Marcus sat in the ranger station's waiting area, using Janet's phone to call for a ride. Through the windows, he could see the highway in the distance, the same stretch of asphalt that led to Crossroads' truck stop. But the truck stop itself was invisible from this angle, hidden behind hills and distance. For the first time in months, Marcus felt like he could breathe freely. 6 months later, Marcus was working as a day-shift security guard at a shopping mall in Colorado, trying to pretend that his time in Wyoming had been nothing more than a particularly vivid nightmare. He'd found a small apartment, made a few casual friends, and slowly rebuilt something resembling a normal life. The dreams, however, refused to fade. Every night he found himself back in the truck stop, watching the man in the yellow rain slicker tap against the windows. He would wake in cold sweats, checking and rechecking the locks on his doors and windows. The rules had followed him across state lines, carved into his memory with surgical precision. On a rainy Tuesday in April, Marcus was eating lunch in the mall's food court when he noticed a woman at the table across from him. She was maybe 25, blonde, wearing the uniform of a local employment agency. What caught his attention wasn't her appearance, but what she was reading. A laminated card with 7 numbered rules. Their eyes met across the food court, and the woman smiled. It was the same too-wide expression he remembered from that terrible night, revealing teeth that seemed sharper than they should be. "Marcus," she said, rising from her table. "I've been looking for you." Every instinct told him to run, but his legs felt like they were made of lead. The woman approached with unhurried confidence, settling into the chair across from him as if they were old friends. "You left without saying goodbye," she said conversationally. "That wasn't very polite." "I followed the rules," Marcus managed to whisper. "Most of them," she agreed. "But you missed something important. You see, once someone uses the map to find home, they carry a piece of home with them wherever they go. It's like a scent that never washes off." She leaned forward, and Marcus caught a whiff of that familiar smell, not quite decay, but something organic and wrong that belonged to a place where the rules of reality had been suspended. "I have a new job for you. She continued, sliding a business card across the table. Night security at a warehouse in Nevada. Very similar to your previous position. Isolated location, simple duties, strange rules to follow. The business card was ordinary, except for one detail: the address was incomplete, leaving a blank space where the street name should be. Marcus realized he would need directions to find it. "I'm not interested," he said. "Oh, I think you are." The woman's smile widened impossibly. "You see that tunnel you escaped through? It doesn't lead to freedom. It leads to recruitment. Everyone who finds their way out of the truck stop becomes part of the system. We need people who understand the rules, who can help us expand our operation." She gestured around the food court, and for the first time, Marcus noticed how many people were reading laminated cards. Men and women of all ages scattered throughout the mall, all studying what appeared to be rules for jobs they hadn't started yet. "The truck stop was just the beginning," the woman explained. "We have warehouses, office buildings, security posts, and retail locations across the country. All of them need night shift workers who understand that some places operate by different rules." "What if I refuse?" "Then you'll discover what happens to map readers who try to break their contracts." The woman's features began to shift subtly, skin flowing like wax in heat. "Have you been sleeping well, Marcus? Having interesting dreams?" The truth hit him like a physical blow. The dreams weren't memories. They were training sessions, conditioning him for his next assignment. Every night he'd been practicing the rules, memorizing procedures, preparing for a job he didn't know he'd already accepted. "The warehouse position comes with a significant pay increase," the woman continued as her face settled back into human proportions. "And much better benefits. Health insurance, dental, and a very generous life insurance policy. Though I should mention that life insurance isn't really necessary for our employees. We take care of our own." Marcus looked at the business card again. The blank space where the street name should be was slowly filling itself in words appearing in elegant script. "Directions will be provided upon acceptance of employment." "How many?" he asked quietly. "How many what? How many people have you recruited? How many truck stops and warehouses and office buildings?" The woman's laugh sounded like breaking glass mixed with distant screaming. "Oh, Marcus, you still don't understand the scope of what we're doing. We're not recruiting people for jobs. We're recruiting reality for expansion. Every place we establish becomes a little less bound by the old rules, a little more open to possibilities." She stood smoothing down her skirt with perfectly human gestures that somehow seemed wrong. "You have 48 hours to report to the Nevada facility. The address will reveal itself when you're ready to begin. And Marcus, this time try to read all the rules. We've added a few new ones since Wyoming." As she walked away, Marcus noticed that her reflection in the food court's windows showed something else entirely, a writhing mass of shadows and angles that hurt to perceive directly. He looked down at the business card in his hand. The address was now complete, burned into the white cardstock as if branded with heat. Below it, new text was appearing: "Welcome to the network. Your orientation begins at midnight." Marcus crumpled the card and threw it in the trash, but when he looked back, it was sitting on the table in front of him again, pristine and unmarked. Some jobs, he was beginning to understand, came with contracts that couldn't be broken. As he left the mall, Marcus counted 17 other people walking to their cars while reading laminated rule cards. Tomorrow, they would all begin new positions at isolated facilities across the country, each one learning that some places operated by different rules. And somewhere in Wyoming, a new night shift worker was probably just discovering that the coffee maker had gone silent at 2:17 a.m. The cycle continued, spreading like infection across the map of America, one desperate job applicant at a time.